Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Ballantyne, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here today for the Political Action Committee for Child Welfare. The group of people standing behind me are all people with lived child welfare experience, and they have decided to dedicate their time as adults now in looking at the child welfare system and particularly looking at critical issues that affect children in care. The issue that we're talking about today is the importance of education, particularly post-secondary education for children, and just the difference that it can make in their lives and the difference that it can make in turning things around for them so they can really move on to contribute to society in the way that they would want to do. It's a real pleasure for me also to introduce Jane Kovarikova, the founder of this group. And I actually know Jane from a very long time ago as a child in care and have had many wonderful opportunities to meet with her over the last several years. And I still remember the meeting when she said, "Mary, I'm thinking that I'm going to pull together a group of people that can be wonderful advocates and really try to make some huge difference, and I'm going to pull together my colleagues, former children in care, who can really try to move government policy programs and ideas forward on behalf of other youth." So I'm going to turn it to Jane Kovarikova. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you for your years of service in the OACAS as well. We're here today because I don't think that foster children should have to fight so hard to succeed in life after being raised by the government. I am, as you know, the Child Welfare PAC founder. I'm also a PhD candidate at Western University now. I lived in foster care from age 6 to 16 when I moved out on my own. And today we're going to talk about a report that we're going to release, but I would like to start with the journey of what led to that report. So I sit on a regional agency board that serves child protection needs, and they asked me to review the resources that we give to children who are aging out of the system. So I looked at some of those resources, some that are provincially distributed, and many of them use the language of success, skills for success, training for success, pathways for success. But when I reviewed the resources, I found that they were all survival-based. They talked about housing, but not a word about housing was in there. It was about renting and your rights when you're evicted. They talked about how to get your ID, but I'm not sure how that connects to success exactly. You should be leaving with an entire basket full of ID by the time you're aging out of the system. They also had your rights when you're arrested. I'm not sure I know of any parent that provides their child with a handbook on their rights when they're arrested. So after I saw these survival-based resources and the lack of resources that would help you realize opportunities to change your life in the future, I approached the Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth and conducted a research study that looked at how children turn out after foster care. If this is how we prepare them, what are their life outcomes? And what I found was that in Ontario, we have no idea because the government does not track the life outcomes of children raised in the state care here. However, academics have done studies in other jurisdictions, and it paints a pretty grim picture across countries and across 40 years of studies to a percentage point. It doesn't matter if it's other Canadian jurisdictions, if it's the USA, if it's the UK, if it's 1960, or if it's 2018. The outcomes are poverty, homelessness, sometimes jail, sometimes early parenthood, and low academic achievement. Like you name it, it's there. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, my colleagues have had to fight really hard with some of those outcomes too to get to the point where we're all on this stage today. And we feel that the system could do a better job serving the needs of foster children. So the report we're releasing today builds on that report on youth outcomes, and it looks at policy responses by the government in child protection. And the policy responses that are most typical for youth who are aging out of the system usually involve mentorship or in-class life skills programming. And academics have done studies on these types of policies, as well as identified gaps in policy making, and have found that they're not very effective for life outcomes for youth in care. However, the picture is not necessarily as grim because there is a lot of opportunity for innovation even on some of the pre-existing policies, such as taking in-class life skills into the real world and providing practice, or perhaps facilitating environments where mentorship can occur organically, which tends to produce more impact on life outcomes of youth leaving care. The other two major findings of the report were that, of course, more research is absolutely essential so that you can understand which policies are having the greatest effects or are not working, and then you can innovate on those. The Ontario government does not track the life outcomes of youth after foster care, which means that none of our policies are evidence-based. If you don't know what happens after, how do you know what you did before worked? So what we're calling for today, as a result of this report on evidence-based policymaking and impact measurement, is that the ministry and the government make evidence-based standards that they check their own policies against and any programs that they intend to fund. And that is essentially the report in a nutshell. There's a lot more information there, and I'd encourage anyone who's interested to download it off of our website. And I thank you so much for your time, and I will now pass it over to Valerie McMurtry with the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada, who commissioned the latest report. Thank you.
Well done. Thanks, Jane. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. I'm Valerie. I am the CEO of the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada. It's important to tell you that we are a fully philanthropic organization. We're not a government agency. We don't have any government support. So our foundation, with the philanthropic support we raise every year, we're devoted to improving outcomes for children involved in our child welfare system. And we turn to this work around the issues of children leaving care. We've been funding programs for many years, a flagship a scholarship program to support young people pursuing higher education, for example. And we've been asking ourselves, how do we know what are the best interventions? So we can use our precious philanthropic dollars wisely and know that we're driving towards the best possible outcomes for youth who leave care. So that's why we commissioned the work, which Jane, separately from the amazing work she's doing with her PAC, we said we really want to have a look at this so we can do our work better and be really confident that the programs that we're getting behind are going to have great outcomes. As an example, just speaking of that post-secondary education program, we've been funding scholarship awards for over 20 years. It started in Toronto, but now across Canada. And a couple of years ago, we said, we feel great about that. We know we're having a good outcome and an impact on those kids who are able to get into post-secondary studies, but we really didn't know how their lives are turning out. And so we took on our own study of that program to track, to kind of reconnect with young people we funded many years ago to find out how their lives are going. And the results were very interesting because we heard that on par with their peers, they feel their lives are good, they're thriving, but we know that they have many struggles still in terms of finding high quality employment, in terms of some of their mental health supports that they seek in their lives. So this is really important work. We're really pleased that Jane's getting behind it. We really admire the work of the PAC. We want to be led by evidence, and we want to align our programs with the work of the governments in this country to have better outcomes for all youth who come involved with our child welfare system. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. If there's any questions, we could take them now. Otherwise, we're happy to answer questions later.
Sure. I'm actually just wondering, so today, now, are you looking for the government to essentially establish standards? Or are you looking for funding as well, or programming? Can you maybe just clarify?
Yes, I would think that establishing government standards would be the first step. Of course, the government does provide funding to a lot of service providers and people who develop programs. So the standards is where it would check to make sure that those programs had the most likelihood of success, right? One of the standards could be, for example, compelling anyone who's seeking funding to demonstrate that they've done a literature review on the program that they're planning to implement. Because if you look at sort of the objective research on that type of program, then you could build off lessons learned, and then you get a progressive system, right? As opposed to repeating things that just feel good, right? Thank you.
Sorry.
Sure, thanks. All right, thanks everyone.